Hello everybody, this is Italics, and today I'm going to show you how to basically take your bricked MR3040 and reload the firmware on it using the serial interface, the UART interface. And to do this, you're going to either need a like an Arduino Uno, or you're going to need a separate FTDI adapter. Like FTDI to USB adapter, and basically that's just going to allow us to interface with the device on a really low level. So basically the symptoms of a failed firmware upgrade is, first off, it's really not creating a hotspot. You can't access it at all, and the big thing is you'll see the status lights on the front of it just flashing on and off and on and off. So basically I'm going to recreate that real quick. Right now mine's working, but I'm going to basically flash it out with the firmware in a way I know that's actually going to make it become a nice shiny brick. Things that you're going to need here is in addition to the FTDI adapter or the Arduino Uno, is going to be there's a soldering iron. Probably you're going to need some little jeweler screwdrivers, and you're also going to need just some wires to interface between the board and your adapter. I'm going to brick mine real quick, and then I will come right back. Sorry about the background noise. So what I've done just now is something I think that a lot of people are going to do. I went in and I, after upgrading to OpenWRT, if you don't know what that is, that doesn't really matter. But basically, I wrote the firmware, the original stock firmware, to the device without getting rid of the boot portion of the firmware. Now the firmware is basically going to be hosed. If we turn it on, you'll see I'm talking about the lights, they just flash, and that's because it's not getting past the bootloader. So it is possible to completely wipe out your device, like all of it. If you do that, this isn't going to flash. It's just going to be pretty much the power light is going to be solid on, and these are going to stay black, or it's all going to stay black. If that happens, really, I don't think there's a lot you're going to be able to do. I could be wrong on that though, so maybe do some more research. This is at least not going to work for you. So, okay, so what we have to do is we have to use some FTDI adapter to actually fix the device. So this is a USB to FTDI adapter. You see it's just got some pins sticking out here, and it goes to USB. This was about I think $3. You can buy them really cheap, but I think more people probably have an Arduino Uno, and plus it's just a cool way to show off a little trick that you probably maybe haven't even thought about. If you do have an Uno, basically, I've just taken the 320p chip right off the board. You can do this with an integrated, one with the surface mount board, but you have to do some stuff with this jumper and a capacitor. But if you have just a normal Uno, this works great. So just take the chip off. And then all we do is we're going to connect one of these ground pins and our TX and RX pins to the device after, of course, we take it apart. So I won't be covering this, or covering the FTDI adapter on its own, because, again, I haven't seen somebody cover doing it with the Uno to fix the TP-Link. So, all right. So real quick, I'm just going to get this apart. these devices are actually really hard to get apart. Let's take out the battery. I'm going to just turn the actual power switch on for a second, just to, you know, discharge anything. And we just need a screwdriver. It's a little teeny tiny, some really teeny tiny little, oh gosh, my brain is just not working. Phillips heads. So let's see if this actually works. I might need to get the smaller one. Oh no, where did my small one go? Ah, here we go. Putting stuff in the wrong place. So there's only 2 screws holding this together, but there are lots of really big pain in the ass clips to get apart. So this is probably by far the hardest thing of the whole project. So just take these little Phillips screws out. All right, there's 1. There's 2. All right, so this part, you're going to need just a flathead screwdriver. This is the part that is really hard to figure out at first. Take your screwdriver and let me see if I got this right. Yeah, you see how it's got these little slots here. You're going to push in and down like this, and you're going to kind of, you're not going to pry out like this. You're going to just kind of push between and then down, and then it pops out like that, you see? So I'm going to do that on this one, this one, and you'll see there's these little clips here. These are the ones that are actually really a pain in the ass if you aren't expecting them. And we're just going to do the same to this side. There's one right here that's normally a pain in the ass. There's that. And there is that. All right, good. All right, so this top part's off. It's probably not going to come off as easy for you. I've already, if you'll see here, I've already done this before. And I got a little bit of rosin on there, but that's all right. So here's the board. All we're going to do is we're going to solder some pins on here. I mean, some wires on here, and then plug them into our Uno. Like I said, I've already done this before because it's easy to brick it, and I thought it would be good to have a cable around for it. So I just made one last time I had to do this. Basically, all you're going to need is some cables with some male jumpers on the end here. And you see I've got 3 of them. We're only going to use 3. We just need a common ground, and then one for RX and TX from our Arduino. So I've put these together and this separate just because that's how it lays out on the board. If you're using the FTDI adapter, just follow the exact same instructions down to the down completely. You know, you'll use TX and RX and ground. You won't do anything with the 5-volt or the 3-volt rails, but everything else is going to be the same. All right, so let me grab real quick. I wrote this out a second ago. So here are our pins on our Uno or our TTL adapter. And then these are the pins on the MR3040. So you'll notice real quick, I'll just get in here. You see that one's square, that one's circle, and you can't really see it because there's solder all over it. But that's actually like a diamond shape. You can kind of see it a little bit from that side, but that's really like a diamond shape. And then we're not going to use that one at all. That's I think that's a 3-volt, 3+ volt pin, but we're not going to program it using the power from the Arduino. So, all right. So what we're going to do, and this part throws people a little bit if you haven't worked with these adapters, you're going to go RX on the Uno to TX on the MR3040, and then vice versa, and then ground to ground. This is because this is the receive pin. So the MR3040 on its TX pin is going to transmit to the receive pin here, and this one's going to transmit to the receive pin here. And then you just need a common ground between the two. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to solder these wires onto those pins. I'm not really going to pay too much attention to which colors I use, other than the black has to be ground. All I'm going to do is, if it's green, if I use the green for the TX, I'm going to put the green in the RX over on the Uno. All right, so I'm going to do that real quick, and then I will get right back to it. All right, so I just soldered the green one to RX, the yellow to TX, and the black to ground. And now we're just going to plug our jumper end into our Arduino. All right, so since we've got the RX here, we're going to make sure that we get the green into the TX here, right? So we're just gonna go like that, in there, just like that. And oops, actually, I'm sorry, I got this backwards. Green is TX on the board, so we want to have TX facing RX and vice versa. And then we'll just plug this into a ground jumper. There's one right over here. Make sure we're on all of our right places. Now all we need to do is plug it into the computer and then flash the firmware back onto the device. All right, guys. So now that we've got everything wired up how we need, ready to do the actual computer part of this. So just so you know, first off, I accidentally swapped the TX and RX pins on the Uno there, so I swapped them back around. But symptom there is just that you won't see any serial output. So just swap those around if you see that happen, and then you should be fine. And I put the battery back into the MR4030, and then I put an Ethernet adapter from the MR3040 over to my laptop. And now we are ready to actually do this thing. So you're going to need some software. You're going to need a terminal, like a serial terminal program. I recommend Putty. It's great for just general all-around anything serial terminal or just text terminal, basically. You're also going to need a TFTP server. I recommend for that, I recommend going to just type in OpenTFTP server like that. Be the first one here. It says OpenTFTP server. All right. You're also going to need your firmware. So if you're going to upgrade to the stock firmware again, just go to the TP-Link website and grab the firmware that you need for your version. Make sure you are checking to make sure you have version 1 or version 2. Doesn't really matter, process is going to be the same, but the firmware is not going to be the same. So make sure you get the right firmware, basically. All right, so first off, let's set up our TFTP server. I've already set it up, but I'll show you something anyways. So getting in here you'll create a directory when you do the installation. Just it's next on everything until the end, and then now's where the real configuration portion takes place. So just go to your C drive and OpenTFTP server. Just create a folder here. I called this folder boot. It doesn't really matter what it's called. Now go into the OpenTFTP server configuration settings file and edit. You're going to look for home right here. I added this line in here. Before it just looked like this here. So all I did is I created a new line, went over to my OpenTFTP server directory, and then held down Shift, right clicked on boot, and then did copy as a path, or as path. Then I came back over to this new line and I pasted it in there. Be sure you get rid of the quote marks here and save that, and you're good. So that's basically our configuration for that is done. Now we need to go into our network adapter settings and change the network adapter settings. So go to Open Network and Security Center, then change adapter settings. Look for Ethernet, or it might also say local area connection or network, local area connection, depending on your version of Windows. Just find whatever your Ethernet adapter is, and then go to Properties. And now we're just going to look for Internet Protocol version 4. Go in there, and you'll see I already have an IP address in here, a static IP. Just change it from obtain IP address automatically to use the following IP address, and type in an address. A valid address, to be specific. And it is a 1 directory. I think it comes out, I think that the MR3040 will come out as 1.100, I believe, but it doesn't really matter because we can do something to set the IP address on the MR4030 and we'll be fine. So I'm going to do 1.253, and subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. Just click OK there, and click OK there, and you can get out of this screen. So now we're ready to run our TFTP server, but we do want to have the MR3040 at its prompt first. Otherwise, it's going to have a hard time listening. The TFTP server is going to have a hard time figuring out what IP address to listen on. So we're going to leave that off for the moment. Now we need to find out what the COM port of our Arduino Uno is. So we're going to go to Start and type in Device Manager. You'll see ports over here. Just click the little drop down, and then you'll see Arduino Uno COM3. That's what we want. Now that we know it's COM3, go over to your terminal emulator. So in this case it'll be Putty, and I'm going to change it to serial, and change this serial line to COM3. And we want to change the baud rate, or like transfer speed, to 115.200, and then just click open, and you'll see nothing's happening here. So I'm going to turn on the MR4030 now, and then we should see all sorts of stuff happening. That is, if I can find the switch. There we go. Alright, so you see this U-boot, and now we're just going to see this nice loop. And it's just going to keep doing this. See, it says auto boot in 1 second. That's basically what's happening when your lights are flashing. It's saying it's turning on the lights, and you'll actually see in here it says LED turn or on somewhere in here. I can't, it goes by too quickly to really see. But that's basically what's happening. It's turning the lights on, seeing it can't can't continue, and then it's just starting the whole process over and over again. So when you get to where you see auto boot, type in as quickly as you can a TPL. So T is in Tom, P is in Paul, and L is in Libra. And then you'll get this Hornet prompt here. So for instruction on this, I highly recommend that you go to the OpenWRT website. Even if you're not using the OpenWRT firmware, just go back to the OpenWRT site and go to their 3040 page. And I'll make sure and put a link to this in the description, but it really tells you everything about this whole process. Just not so clear on the serial pin part. So what we're looking for is this part that says manual flash under U-boot serial console. So basically we've already typed in TPL, so it's now showing the Hornet prompt. And before we do this TFTP boot section, we need to turn on our TFTP server. Oh, I just forgot one last thing. Sorry about the TFTP server. After you've made your boot directory, or whatever directory you choose to call it, drop your firmware into this directory. It'll need to be a .bin file. If you download it from the TP-Link site, it'll come as a zip file, so make sure you extract it first. Then drop it into your boot directory, and then go over and then click on this Run Standalone. And you should see, if everything is set up right, that interface, that IP address you chose listed right here. I've got a lot of interfaces on here because of virtualization and whatnot, so you'll see lots of IPs for me, but yeah, all you're really looking for is to make sure that you can see the IP address you set statically a second ago. So that looks good. Now, if you go to the OpenWRT site again, you'll notice that it's got this TFTP boot and then kind of a location here. You want to make sure that that is typed in absolutely perfect, or better yet, just copy and paste, because if you put the wrong location in here during, in particular during this erase or the cp.b portion, it will become a nice shiny brick and it will ever work again, pretty much. So make sure you just copy and paste what you need to do. Alright, so one other thing that we're going to actually see that in here is that it's missing something to do actually in this page, and that is there's a couple of ways to do this. You can either run this command, see what it says here. It'll say TFTP from server, and give you an IP address, and then our IP address is this, and then set your IP address statically on your laptop accordingly. Or you can do what I did, which is set your IP address first, then come in and then set the IP address on the MR3040. So I'm going to do that just because it's good to know how to do, because basically if you know how to do this, you have the ability to plug your little MR3040 router into your normal router, and then you can just do all of this through your normal network without having to plug directly into it. So I'm going to set that real quick. You do that by typing in set env and ipaddr. This is going to set the IP address of the MR3040. So I'm going to type it in as 192.168. I think I did 1, so 1.1. Alright, press enter. Alright, now type in set N for set environmental, type in server IP. I believe that's right. And we're going to type in the IP address we set a second ago for our laptop. If you don't remember, you can just go here. So 253. I did 253, not 254. Okay. I press enter. Now we should be able to do the TFTP boot portion here without it causing problems. So copy this TFTP boot and address part. Oops. And if you just right click in here, it will paste. Do space. Now we need to get the exact name of our firmware. Make sure that you're using the firmware that is appropriate for your version of TP-Link router. So you'll see mine says V2, MR3040 V2. If you do the V1, it won't work. It'll probably upload, but it won't. The device won't work after. If you do that, just get the correct firmware and then do the same process over. All right, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select the .bin and everything, and I'm going to do copy. I'm going to paste this. Now if everything's working, we should be able to press enter and see hashes like you see loading here. If not, we'll see T's. So this means that it's not communicating for some reason. So if this happens, it's probably either your firewall or it is, in my case, it might be a bad cable. So I'm going to just go into Windows Advanced Firewall, and we're just going to turn it off for the moment. See if that does it, because that does have the potential to work. So okay, now let's go back to the thing here. I'm going to press Control C to end it, and then we're going to copy this line again. .bin. Oh, that's not going to work. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So we need, you see how I got that space at the beginning? If you have a space at the beginning, it's not going to work. So, all right. .bin. Let's see if it works. I think that I have a bad cable. I'll be right back and try a different cable, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to have to do some more troubleshooting. Alright, so yeah, it looks like it was a bad cable. So you see I kind of basically just switched the cable out, and I had to reconnect and everything because I accidentally yanked the power on the MR3040, but you know, we're all back to where we've loaded in the firmware here into memory. So now we can actually apply it to the device. So again, I'm just going to highlight and then copy and paste into our window here from the website. I'm going to erase. And this is the part that basically, if you screw it up, it's going to be broken for good. Same thing with this next part that says cp.b. And boot M isn't quite as bad. So anyways, highlighting this. Swap over. Alright. Enter. Now it's actually writing the firmware to the flash. So make sure that you have your battery charged or it's plugged in, preferably. Because again, you can break things. Like right now, I'm being really stupid because well, I still have 47 minutes. Okay. All right, and then lastly, we're just going to do boot M, and this should just take off. And actually, this really should just take off and start booting up like normal. But it's going to go through a lot of reboots and things at this point as it finishes up the installation of the firmware. So enter, and there we go. So it's taken off now. You can see it's registering devices. It's doing all of that. We should hit a point where things stop going in a loop, and we will be good. This screen here is going to look different if you're using the stock firmware. This here is an output from the OpenWRT firmware, so it'll look a little different there, but you should see things happening like this. Anyways, yeah, so really though, that's all there is to it. Just make sure that you really pay close attention to the page from the wiki here, and yeah, everything should be good. Just make sure you put a little bit of extra time into checking for typos and whatnot. Alright, so I hope this was helpful to you guys, and good luck, and have a fun time.